Welcome to Wolf's RadFem Summer Camp Mini Zoom Series. Today we have Lorraine Nowlin joining us from Connecticut. Lorraine is a passionate advocate for women and children with a particular focus on victims of male violence. She runs the Substack, The Radical Woman, at lorrainenowlin.substack.com. Lorraine's presentation today is Rising Together, the Key to Unity Beyond All That Divides Us.
I wished I were with you all in person, but it is what it is, and I'm glad that I'm here presenting to all of you. So, rising together, the key to unity beyond all that divides us. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but what do I mean by rising together? Rising, going from a lower position to a higher position. Women as a sex class need to rise. In 2025, we should no longer be second-class citizens. Women don't have the same rights or opportunities as men because of the group we belong to. That group would be the female sex. In some states, women don't have the right to make their own reproductive choices. According to the Center of Reproductive Rights, Georgia and Florida are among the states with a 6-week abortion ban. Since many women don't discover a pregnancy until about 6 weeks, this could be considered an outright ban. Texas has an abortion ban with criminal penalties. Women do not have the same rights as men, as long as men claiming a female gender identity can encroach on our opportunities. These are only a few of the challenges women have to overcome. We cannot remove these obstacles if we are divided. We have to overcome these divisions. What is the key? Prioritizing women, regardless of background, culture, or religion, is the key to overcoming these divisions. Consider well-known concepts like divide and conquer, or popular wisdom such as a house divided against itself cannot stand. I'll use sports as an example, and I'm the furthest from a sports fan. However, it's common sense that unity among the team is essential to achieve victory. Can you imagine the Yankees allowing personal differences to impact them on the field? Or what if you were in a team cooking contest like those on the Food Network? Can you imagine your teammates doing and cooking their own thing? Do you think you'd win? You won't. We can apply this principle to the radical feminist movement. The quickest way for us to lose a battle is if we are allowing the other team to scatter and divide us. These divisions lead back to the same source, patriarchy and male supremacy, and that source benefits from our division. Again, divide women, and then you can conquer women. As an example, I'll give my testimony of how I prioritize women even over Blackness. Some of you may know my story, but I grew up thinking it was all about Blackness, and being a girl or a woman was irrelevant, maybe even a distraction against the real problems. I believe that any injustice I face was due to being Black. Women's issues were secondary or not important at all. Folks led me to believe that for Black people, being a woman made your life easier. I've had Black and white people make that claim, and I used to believe it. I was young. In case there are any New Yorkers in the house, you may remember the late 80s. It seemed like every single summer, a Black man was killed in one of the 5 boroughs by gangs of white males. I remember in the 80s, this used to happen almost every summer. Now, I hadn't heard of racist mobs attacking Black women, but in hindsight, I wonder if I just didn't hear about it. Maybe the Black collective didn't care enough to be angry. During my teens and 20s, and even in my early 30s, I didn't often hear of Black women as victims of police violence or hate crimes. Then I learned that Black women are not experiencing less racism at all. It's just different, but no less dangerous. Black women also experience sexism from both within and outside the Black collective. A Black man may have a white and other non-Black people clutch their purses or move from a seat next to him. I'm not saying that doesn't happen to women, but from my experience, I've had people invading my spaces or touching my hair without permission, as if I'm some kind of like, I don't know, a doll just that they're curious about. But now, I'm hearing of more Black women dying in police custody and killed in their homes. I disagree that the world views Black women just as much of a threat as Black men. Instead, I've noticed that we don't have to do as much as Black men to be victims of police violence. In other words, we don't need to appear threatening to be victims. Think of Sandra Bland. Our words, or at any rate, our willingness to speak out is enough for us to get beaten or killed. It's almost like sassing is a crime punishable by death for Black women in the United States. Not only that, you've also heard that Black people are more likely to be killed by police while unarmed. But did you know that it's Black women's deaths that are raising that statistic? And if you look at the screen that I have up here, I have this from Washington University. It's basically Black women are the ones who are unarmed. Black men are unarmed at the same rate as white men are. So it's us. That's when I realized there's a danger of being a race first woman. Women who are race first or exclusively about race put themselves in danger, even more danger, I might add. As I said, there was a time when Black women were not victims of police violence as much as we are now. And I believe it's because we are the face of anti-police culture in the US. Don't get me wrong. We've always been in these movements, if you think about the civil rights movement and such. But there's something, and I can't really explain it, but there's a soldiering among Black women now that seemed to that was quite different than what I've read about the civil rights movements back in the 50s and 60s. It's like we're soldiers now. Black American girls are socialized to see themselves in terms of a sex class secondarily, if at all. All of those things led me to realize that I should prioritize being a woman over being Black. That means I will never stand with a Black man that has raped or harmed a woman in any way, shape, or form, including white women. It also means that issues that directly impact Black women or women in general deserve more of my attention. It's why I can look at the common belief that white women were the ones mostly responsible for Black men being lynched with skepticism. Nor will I automatically consider a white woman a racist when she's filmed calling the police on a Black bird watcher. I don't feel any pull to stand with Black men on anything automatically. I should stress automatically. I wait for the facts and decide from there. Speaking of advocating for the Black male collective, I know of many, and I've mentioned this before, many Black women who say they refuse to march on behalf of Black males killed by police, myself included. Does that mean they or I support the killing of unarmed Black men or even armed Black men? No. It just means that I don't automatically feel that officers are not justified using force against Black men. I wait for the facts because I'm not race first. As a Black woman who prioritizes being a woman over being Black, I'm free to believe that some of these killings, unfortunately, could not be avoided. Again, it's all tragic, but it could not be avoided. There was a time when I think that anytime a Black man was killed, always racism. It was always that police officer's fault. It doesn't mean that I ignore racism. Refusing to march means not putting my life or limb on the line for others. Activism is both rewarding and dangerous. If I put my life on the line, it will be for me or my children. Prioritizing women means that I am willing to take risks for women in general, more so than I would for any man. When you are on the front lines, you become the face of that movement, which means you become the target. And it sure as hell better be worth the risk. I must be honest, men of regardless of race, are not worth risk to my life and health. We are on our own. There are sad but honest comments that Black women say in private, whether online or offline. This is not just on internet discussions, but I've heard Black women say, Black men are not our allies. We are on our own. Since they are not our allies, there is no reason to be allies to them. No, I haven't commissioned a study or anything like that to determine that all or most Black women feel this way. But the fact that it keeps on coming up on and offline leads me to believe that this is becoming, a common belief. Again, many Black women have declared that they will not advocate on behalf of Black men. But it is my opinion that the most detrimental stereotype Black women face is the strong Black woman. It is discarding and minimizing the humanity of Black women disguised as a compliment. In other words, let her exert herself to death for our benefit, but we'll owe her nothing. She's strong. If she asks for help, just tell her she's strong. She can handle it. To sum it all up, she will be everyone's mule and get nothing in return. Many people don't feel Black women are worthy of help or protection. When we dare to assert our right to put our needs first, people will attempt to shame us. Don't get me wrong, strength and resilience are, those are qualities we should have. But Black women should not be expected to possess those qualities any more than anybody else. It would do us a world of good to prioritize ourselves as women. If I hear Black women will save us one more time, I think I'm going to scream. As I said, I tend to hear this from people who have no interest in returning the favor. If you make a similar claim, please stop. I don't know any Black women who has ever expressed saving anyone. And the truth is, we can't save everyone. Save the world how? When I go to the voting booth, I'm not thinking about saving the world. Well, the whole world. I mean, sometimes I'm thinking about women, yes. But the best interests of my children and me are all that's on my mind. And I don't think it's a stretch to believe that most Black women feel the same way I do. I don't even consider the needs of the Black male collective when it comes to what I advocate for. So again, although we advocate, and do what we can for women, we cannot save anybody. I also appreciate when white women and other women listen. A white woman I consider to be a true and faithful ally puts Black women, or all women, first, not just Black women. I remember a comment from a white radical feminist about police killings of Black people, and she said, as harsh as this may sound, she said, "I will not lift a finger in protest unless the victim is a Black woman." And again, that might seem harsh to some people, but I feel she's 100%. When I say prioritizing women over race, it does not mean that I ignore racism or that no one should be proud of their culture. It means that when it comes down to it, the needs of women are a priority over the needs of a race. Besides, there are so many problems Black women are facing that need attention, one of which is the increase in suicide. And it says, while there are many benefits for young people to use social media, adverse effects such as cyberbullying, online challenges, and social comparison and imitation may provoke and aggravate suicidal thoughts and behaviors. I don't know if anybody is aware of this, but there's a lot of bullying of Black women online. I'm not saying it doesn't happen to anybody else, but there's a whole lot of it. I was on X the other day, and some guy, and I don't want to say it's just Black men, although I do see it's mostly men, period. He was showing a video where a Black woman was not, had nothing to do with what was going on, but he still, blamed Black women, and a lot of people in the comments were going along with it. Now, I don't know if he did that, to just show people themselves, but the fact that people were going along with it was just really and truly frightening. And then while I'm saying, I'm not going to pretend that, social media bullying is the sole thing that's causing suicides among Black women, but we know that it can, and in those who might have, certain mental health challenges, how will that bullying impact them? I also need to mention some of the degrading language used to describe the late Adriana Smith. I'm sure you've all heard about that unfortunate case in Georgia. She was a Black woman who was denied death with dignity to save the life of her unborn baby. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad the child is alive, but the way that this took place, it was just atrocious. But anyway, she was referred to as a cadaver, a corpse, etc. And there was a lot of chatter online lamenting the fact that it was mostly white women using such dehumanizing language to describe her. We often wonder if a white woman would have been described in those terms. So again, it's okay that we are passionate about this, but when we think about prioritizing women, which is the key, let's just make sure that we're giving Black women the same courtesy and honor that we would give to women who aren't Black. So all of what I mentioned just shows that Black women have serious issues as a class, and it's necessary for me and other Black women to prioritize our issues as women. Now, Black women have to stretch their thinking too. At the same time, Black women must stretch their thinking enough to prioritize women. For example, I've learned that many white women are offended by the use of the word Karen to describe them. Karen is a name that has become a racially bigoted term against white women. When I first heard it, those complaining were using it to describe a white woman who dares to assert herself. I actually thought when I heard it, well, she's speaking up for herself. What's wrong with that? I've listened to Black women using it as well. We should not be doing that. It does not matter whether white women are treated better in society or that white women sometimes engage in racism. If you are experiencing racism from a white woman, just use accurate terminology to describe the problems that you are encountering. Calling a woman a Karen leads to the same type of dehumanization experienced by those who aren't white. Dehumanization is dehumanization, whether she's white or Black. It also trivializes the issue. When I look at the Karen memes and videos, I find that more and more they resemble insults directed at other groups. I don't use Karen to describe racist or bigoted white women. Also, I have questioned some of the historical information I have always believed about white women. When we think of lynching, it's always a white woman who is the cause of the lynching of the Black man. Not saying it didn't happen, but that's most of what we hear. We hear more about the white women than we do the white men that killed those Black men. Everybody knows about Carolyn Bryant. I bet you're more likely familiar with who she was than the racist men who killed Emmett Till. Can you name them without searching on Google? I bet most of you can't. The legal system meant to protect Emmett Till never punished those racist killers and that we can't name. As a result, all the rage was and still is, even though she's been dead for a couple of years, it's still directed at Carolyn Bryant. I firmly believe that if justice had been served to the men that killed him, Bryant would probably be a footnote for most of us, or that most of us would ignore. But justice wasn't served, so the woman has to pay. It's almost as though people hate her more than the killers. Make no mistake, this is not a Carolyn Bryant defense. I'm not defending her. She lied and a boy was murdered. I'm Black and I need to challenge racism. But you know what else? I'm a woman. And I hate when the evil that men do is ignored because sexists would rather blame the woman. Does anybody really believe that those white males were upstanding citizens who meant Black people no harm before Bryant lied? Carolyn Bryant? The core of people's anger is that society could not or would not punish the racist men, so they had to enact this retribution on the woman. Another point, I have witnessed rape apologists use Bryant as an example of why no one should trust a woman claiming to be raped. But have you heard of Reese Taylor? She was a Black woman abducted by a gang of white men, beaten and raped and left for dead. This was during the same era of Emmett Till's murder, but have you heard of her? Was she the wrong sex? Was it because misogynists could not blame Reese or any other woman? I wish that the killers had gone to jail, but if I must be honest again, throwing Bryant in jail would not have served justice. Certainly, if you could ignore the Black men who were known to be, and I want to stress this, unwilling accomplices, because there were Black men in the truck when that took Emmett Till to be killed. Again, not saying that they were willingly there; they were most likely threatened or whatever. But if we can look past that, surely we can look place blame where it is on the murders and not necessarily Bryant's lie. Not saying lying is ever a good thing, but why her and not the men? Also, I want to say something else about lynching when it talks about, one of the other screenshots that I was going to show is that 25% of lynchings were a result of a sexual act, a rape accusation. But we also have to consider that a lot of the women in that particular number were actually murdered. So if you're murdered, you're dead. You can't, lie on someone. So the people left behind probably blamed it on a Black guy because they didn't want to blame the white guy that killed her. So, but again, white women are held up as this evil, beings that caused all these Black men to get killed. So again, as a Black woman, I'm stretching all of the things that I was taught, stretching my thinking, just like we would expect white women and other women to do. Okay, here's another hot button issue: immigration and migrant women. We should all be crushed whenever we hear of American women murdered by illegal immigrants, and that is happening. Some of the names that come to mind are Larissa Sherelle Thompson. She was a Black mother, or was a Black mother from South Carolina, who was killed by a group of males in the country illegally. I believe they were from Honduras. They were here illegally, and that, they shouldn't have been. It was probably any other day for her, being on her way to a friend's house. She was basically ambushed, robbed, and shot to death. There's also Rachel Marin, a white mother of 5, was raped and killed by an undocumented immigrant. The defense tried to smear her as a loose woman to add insult to injury, as if a woman's personal life is a license to kill her. I am not aware of any left-leaning media organizations that demanded justice for these women or any other women who were victims of men who were here illegally. But if we claim to be advocates for women, we should be speaking on their behalf. What is the common denominator of both murders? Men killed them. Women should not be held accountable for the actions of men. Whether or not most migrants are women or men doesn't matter in this particular discussion. Women are among them, and if we claim to be for women, we should care about them. I do not hear of any, now this is the flip side, I do not hear of any right-leaning media that shows any concern for women or migrants who are having just like a brutal time in these detention centers. But we are the ones claiming to be radical feminists, advocates for women. We should care. Some examples. In a March USA Today article, women described ICE detention as a hell on earth, being made to go to the bathroom on themselves, being chained for hours and not being able to shower except for one 3-minute shower every few days, being in a holding cell with almost 30 women. One victim described it as being packed like sardines. Those of you that studied American history, does that sound familiar? In fairness, ICE sent a statement denying the allegations, and it's included in the article. It's also linked on the slides. There was a Haitian woman named Marie-Ange Blase who died in ICE custody. She could very well have had a medical condition that wasn't addressed. Yes, she crossed the border without authorization or parole. That means and that was actually written on the DHS site. That basically means she crossed over illegally. But I think we should understand what the legal process is like and how difficult it is. Here's a snippet from an article from the Cato Institute. Many Americans have the false impression that these carve-outs are realistic options for potential immigrants to join American society. But the government's restrictive criteria render the legal paths available in only the most extreme cases. Even when someone qualifies, annual immigration caps greatly delay and more frequently eliminate the immigrant's chance to come to the United States. Legal immigration is less like waiting in line and more like winning the lottery. It happens, but it is so rare that it is irrational to expect it in any individual case. Again, that's from the Cato Institute. The only other evidence I have, people that I talk to in my particular city, it is extremely difficult to get citizenship, even for the best people. Meanwhile, Afrikaner men need to flee to safety, and I had some good pictures up there. If these able-bodied men can get the welcome mat laid out for them, sure, we can find it in our hearts to do the same for women fleeing violence. By the way, I still haven't seen a plan for Afghan women. I believe that women, whether Latin American, Caribbean, African, Afrikaner, white South African women, or Afghan women should be prioritized for entry into the United States. Women are facing horrendous amounts of male physical and sexual violence in Haiti. There isn't even a question about those occurrences. Why can't Haitian women come here? And why are we silent? Politics. And also related to what I was saying about undocumented women, it seems that Democrats and Republicans, regardless of sex, hate each other. But I think that might also be true of Republican women and Democrat women as well. As our society and world become more violent and the possibility of another world war increases, that's going to get worse. Yes, Republicans are in power and neither party is a friend to women. That does not mean we need all of our eggs in one basket. I doubt Republicans will be in power in 2028, especially if Gavin Newsom is the Democrat nominee. That's my hunch right now. Radical feminists need to make inroads with the Democratic Party. Let's take this time to come up with a master plan. Again, the Democrats are not our friend, but we should not be focused on making friends. The prize we need to keep our eye on is liberation for women, and we can't do that if we're divided. And that can't happen if we don't have a presence in the Democratic Party. While we are sitting back complaining about not working with a politician on one issue due to their stance against abortion, you can believe other political groups are trying to place their influence everywhere. I'm on a number of listservs, a number of email chats of different political groups that are, way on the left. They are trying to get their influence, and they're very, very sneaky. No name, no blame. There are a lot of radical feminists who voted for Donald Trump. I'm not here to judge anybody. But one thing I have not heard yet from those women is concern for migrant or illegal alien women. I haven't heard anyone yet. That's disheartening. Aren't they aware that women may be sent back to dangerous countries and become victims of more male violence? As I said on my Substack, people can call Trump a misogynist, fascist, Nazi, racist, or a damn fool. But one thing I will admit is that he's a smooth operator. He acknowledges the reality of biological sex. He does. But it's like all he had to do was say, I know what a woman is. And a lot of women just jumped. Even if you support closing or securing the borders, and that's a common sense approach, we should want women fleeing male violence to have sanctuary. Even if it's primarily men crossing the border, and let's say you're right about that, my follow-up question is, when and are we publicly or even privately advocating for the supposed few women that are crossing the border? Is our radical feminism conditional? Not only is it conditional upon acceptable women, but the women men tell us are acceptable? That's a tragedy. Women are primarily victimized, raped, killed, and beaten in domestic violence by men of their own racial group because we most often pair up with them, not because any other group is better. But one thing is sure, we are not often raped, killed, or beaten by women of other racial or religious groups. Are we preferring and prioritizing the men who kill us over the women that have done nothing to us? And it's not just white women doing this to other women. Black women are going to have to get uncomfortable too, as I said, because I think we do this too. I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't believe that you can be a radical feminist and not prioritize women over men. It doesn't mean you hate men. It just means you know who needs the most help, women. And I have to say this, I'm not perfect. Even as I'm speaking here, I'm speaking to myself too. I struggle with the knowledge that some women, and I hate to say it, are probably going to perish under patriarchy because they are not with us. Now, that does not mean we should not advocate for all women, but there are some women who are just not going to be on board. And as hard as it is for me to come to realize that, I had to come to that truth. There are some women that are rejecting even everything that I say, no matter what. I think that what we have to do is, as far as advocacy is concerned, advocate with like-minded women, because the women who are not like-minded will sabotage. Of course, We can still fight for them. They will benefit from what we're doing. But as far as advocating and working with people, I think we have to be careful and be, stick to like-minded women. Okay. I don't, some might be, scoffing at what I'm saying. Probably not, because I think I'm preaching to the choir here. But consider this. If women don't win this fight, the world will only get worse and worse for women and girls. If your priority is not to be united with other women, then leave the movement and let us, all of us sitting here, even out in the audience, let us do the work. That's what we would say to women who are just not with it. My personal motto is always create allies, not enemies, and let the enemies create themselves. Last thing, the whole concept of femininity and the way we dress and all those kinds of things. Okay, that's a hot button issue. I worry that in our attempts to free women from the burden of femininity, we're alienating the very ones we are trying to help. I've had the pleasure of working with some of the fiercest advocates for women who also engage in practices many women in our circles deem problematic. They wear makeup. They dye their hair. I dye my hair. I get, again, I'm talking to me. Sometimes they keep their hair long, they have short, trendy haircuts, but they are still fierce advocates and effective advocates for women. We trust women to have abortions, and I'm pro-choice. And some women even say that they choose to be lesbians. I'm not here to say that they're lying or whatever. I believe them. But we can't trust women to wear makeup and without branding them as succumbing to the patriarchy. I had to get over my knee-jerk reactions about policing women's choices to wear whatever they wanted. Now, should everything be personally permissible? No. Should I go out in a plunging neckline? I don't feel that I should. And so I want to, be careful. I'm not saying, be ridiculous. But there are some things that we have to, we have to pick our battles, know what to let go of. Whenever I hear radical feminists speaking on such things, my mind immediately goes back to the strict church circles I grew up with, where women, it was a sin. You were going to hell for wearing pants or makeup. At the same time, because women were so, traumatized by that, they went way overboard, where if you didn't wear makeup, if you didn't change the way you look, you were somehow, not free. Going to opposite extremes. But at the same time, girls and women are not free to choose femininity, where we are not also free to reject it. Women as a class, although individual cases vary, are not free to reject that burden known as femininity. As much as I'm okay with women wearing lipstick, we are not free to reject those things. I would rather push women in the front who are rebelling against those things, without judging the others, but I'm glad when I see women rejecting femininity. It's a little bit more. To be clear, many women put on lipstick or dye their hair without it having anything to do with patriarchy. I acknowledge that, but the problem needs to be emphasized again, and I want to leave you with this. We are not free to choose femininity if we are not free to reject it. Even me as a Black woman with the history of us being defeminized and all those kinds of things, still for Black women, if you are not free to reject the feminine ideal, you're not free. So when it comes to prioritizing women, we're going to have to pick our battles. Is the hair? Is the lipstick? Is the religion? Is the political party worth the division? Thank you. Hey, everybody.
Yes, you're getting a great big applause here at camp. Thank
Big
you.
applause for Lorraine Nowlin. Again, she's got a Substack. It is The Radical Woman, WOM, and then XXN.
Yeah.
Or you can look up Lorraine Nowlin at Substack. And we're so thankful to have you live, squeezing us in right before your vacation.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We are so thankful. Thank you.